Welcome to Collective Worship. I'm going to light our virtual candle while we get ourselves ready for a time of reflection. If you're sitting comfortably, let's greet each other with peace. Peace be with you. And now I have a question. Who is your favourite superhero? Is it someone from the Incredible family, or is it someone from the Marvel universe? Who's your favourite? And why are they your favourite? Is it because they're super strong, or they've got special equipment like a shield or a cape, or is it because they can shoot spider webs, or because they can fly? And I wonder which superpower you would like. Would you like to be really fast or really stretchy? Or would you like to be invisible? I think I might choose being invisible. Christians don't have any superpowers, but Christians believe that God is with us and that God will look after us. Our story today is about someone called Elisha. He lived thousands of years ago, and you can read his story in the Bible in the second book about the kings of Israel. Now, he didn't have any superpowers, but he trusted in God, that God would keep him safe and protect him, just like the superheroes in the Marvel universe. So Elisha was someone who trusted in God and listened to God. He was called a prophet, and he would spend time praying and listening to God. And he asked God to protect the people of Israel because they had an enemy. The king of their neighbour wanted to take over the land of Israel. And he made a plan. He would send his enormous army to attack Israel in a surprise trap. And so he made his plans with his army captains and told them to keep it secret so that Israel could be caught in the trap. But all the while that the enemy king was making his plans, Elisha was listening to God, and God let him know the danger that was there. So Elisha told his servant to run as quickly as he could to the king of Israel and warn him of the danger. The king let the servant in and listened to the message from Elisha, and then made his own preparations, so that when the enemy army was hidden and waiting for the Israelite army to come along so they could trap them and defeat them, they just waited and waited and waited, because the king didn't send his army into the trap. At last, they sent a message back to the enemy king to say, "We've waited, our army's waiting there, but the Israelites have not come." The king was furious and made another plan to trap the Israelite army again. It would be really secret, but the enemy army waited and waited, and no one got caught in their trap. The king was furious. There must be someone who is telling the Israelites all about this. The army said, "There is a prophet in Israel. He must have got news of this, because nothing gets past him." So the enemy king sent soldiers to find out who this prophet was and where they were. The soldier found Elisha looked in through the window and thought, that's just an old man. We don't need an army to capture him. But the enemy king sent his whole army. He didn't want this to fail. So one night, all the horsemen and the chariots and the soldiers went. And the next morning, Elisha's servant looked out and was horrified. There was a huge army surrounding the city with their spears and their chariots and their horsemen and all of their soldiers. It was the enemy. They were trapped. But Elisha wasn't worried at all. Elisha knew that God was with them. Elisha said, don't worry. There's more people on our side than there is on their side. The servant thought Elisha was going mad. There's a huge army out there with their horses and their chariots and their horsemen and their soldiers. But Elisha said, they've just got human powers. God is with us. God is far more powerful. And then Elisha prayed that God would enable Elisha's servant to see what Elisha knew in his heart, that God's army was with them. And Elisha's servant looked out of the window and saw ranks of angel armies standing, protecting the city. And so Elisha walked fearlessly out of the city into the middle of the enemy army. And Elisha asked God to make it so that the enemy army wouldn't be able to see. The enemies were confused and afraid. And Elisha said, follow me. He led the enemy army into the city of Israel. All of the enemy were captured. Israel's king was very excited. They had defeated the enemy. Perhaps they should kill them all. But he turned to Elisha because he knew that Elisha listened to God. Shall we kill them? The king of Israel said. Instead, Elisha said, no, don't kill them. He said to the king, give them a feast. So Elisha prayed that the enemy army would be able to see again. They realized where they were, but then they realized that they weren't going to be hurt. They were going to join in a party. And when they had all eaten their fill at the feast, they were sent back to the enemy king to tell them what had happened, to say that God was more powerful than any army, and that the enemy king would know about God's power. And Elisha's servant, he learned a lesson that day too. He discovered that God was on their side and God would protect him. And so when there was trouble, God was more powerful than that trouble. Elisha had showed the people of Israel that they shouldn't be afraid, because if God is for us, then who can be against us. So we might not face enemy armies, but we do face problems. And we might not have superpowers, but we can turn to God and ask for God to be with us. And so I'm going to finish our collective worship with a short prayer. If you'd like it to be your prayer, you could say Amen at the end, or even turn down the sound on the video and read it for yourself. But if you're not sure about prayer and don't like prayer, then that's okay. But you could use the words to reflect on the things that you look to for protection. So let's have a moment of reflection together. Loving God, you look after us, your people. Help us to trust you. Help us to listen to you. And help us always to be kind to others, even those who are against us. Amen. Thank you very much for listening. Peace be with you. Goodbye.